The United States struck additional Houthi targets in Yemen. Israel uncovers a significant underground weapons factory in Gaza. And in a prime example of how escalation can spiral totally out of control, Pakistan launched missiles into Iran, which I don't think anybody could have predicted just 2 days ago. What's going on, everyone? Let's take a look at some updates as it relates to this broader war that is now spreading all across the Middle East. I'm recording this at 9:30 a.m. Central on Thursday, January 18th, 2024. Starting with the Houthis, they struck another U.S. ship off the coast of Yemen yesterday, prompting another wave of U.S. attacks against Houthi targets. According to U.S. Central Command, a one-way attack drone was launched from Houthi-controlled territory in Yemen and struck the Genco Picardy, a Marshall Islands-flagged U.S.-owned and operated bulk carrier ship. There was some damage reported to the ship. Some images came out showing burn marks on the side, but no injuries reported, and the ship was able to continue on their course. In response to that, according to U.S. Central Command, U.S. forces conducted strikes on 14 Iranian-backed Houthi missiles that were loaded to be fired in Houthi-controlled territories of Yemen. These missiles on launch rails presented an imminent threat to merchant vessels and U.S. Navy ships in the region and could have been fired at any time, prompting U.S. forces to exercise their inherent right and obligation to defend themselves. These strikes, along with other actions we have taken, again, this is the Central Command statement, will degrade the Houthis' capabilities to continue their reckless attacks on international and commercial shipping. It sounds like in some follow-up statements from U.S. officials that these strikes were carried out with Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from surface ships and possibly submarines in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. There's some graphics here that I thought were worthwhile, put together by Intel Schizo on Twitter. The dude's worth following, putting together some great information around the continued escalation between the United States and the Houthis in Yemen. What he's got here is a graphic outlining all of the Houthi attacks against commercial and military vessels in the region, as well as the flag of that respective ship. You can see they're just stacking up. I feel like we're losing count, right? It's multiple events every single week now. And he's also put together a rundown of drone and missile interceptions by the United States, British, and French ships, as well as U.S. and U.K. strikes on those Houthi targets in Yemen. Overall, starting to pile on pretty quickly here, and there's really no sign of this slowing down. Now, a statement from the Houthis related to all of this. They said, quote, "The naval forces of the Yemeni armed forces," again, the Houthis refer to themselves as the Yemeni armed forces. There is still the Republic of Yemen that controls a portion of that territory. They say carried out a targeting operation against the American ship in the Gulf of Aden with a number of suitable naval missiles, and the hit was accurate and direct. The Yemeni armed forces confirmed that a response to the American and British attacks is inevitably coming, and that any new attack will not remain without response and punishment. They say the Yemeni armed forces confirmed the continuation of shipping traffic to all destinations around the world except the ports of occupied Palestine. And wrapping up, they say its operations against Israeli ships or those heading to the ports of occupied Palestine will not stop until the aggression stops and the siege imposed on the steadfast Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip is lifted. So a couple thoughts here. First off, this is a pretty standard Houthi statement following any of their attacks against commercial or military vessels in the region. The couple things I wanted to point out here. One, that they say that there's a response coming to the attacks carried out by U.S. and British forces over the course of the past week. So they're still planning something or saying they're going to do something. And what we've seen so far from Iran and some militias in Iraq, essentially the Houthis are saying, that's not it. We're going to do our own thing. We're going to respond in our own manner. And then, of course, they continue to, in every one of these statements, stress that they will stop firing on these commercial vessels as soon as the siege of Gaza is lifted. Additionally, yesterday, the United States announced the redesignation of the Houthis as a terrorist organization. In a statement put out by Secretary of State Blinken, he said that the designation goes into effect 30 days from today. That was on January 17th, saying the designation seeks to promote accountability for the group's terrorist activities, saying that the Houthis must be held accountable for their actions, but it should not be at the expense of Yemeni civilians. As the Department of State moves forward with this designation, we are taking significant steps to mitigate any adverse impacts this designation may have on the people of Yemen. Then turning to operations on the ground, Israel says that in Khan Yunis, the southern portion of the Gaza Strip, their forces were able to eliminate 40 Hamas militants over the course of the past day. They say they also exposed and destroyed the heart of Hamas's weapons manufacturing industry near the Saladin Road in the Gaza Strip. And they put together quite a few videos that I'm going to run through here. They say this area consisted of weapons factories, lathes, both above and below ground, that were used to produce ammunition and weapons for the Hamas militants. Israel says they located dozens of tunnel shafts connected to a tunnel route hundreds of kilometers long, including a tunnel shaft in the residence of a senior official in Hamas's weapons production unit. They say these tunnels were divided into areas used for the production of rockets and weapons. Using the tunnel network, then these rockets that were assembled underground were transported throughout the Gaza Strip. Now, the more footage that we get from these tunnels, it's just crazy. I mean, they never stop. Every single day, Israel is releasing more footage of these tunnel networks and just how extensive they are. Over the last few weeks, we have started to see a bit of a change in what's being uncovered underground in Gaza. For starters, Hamas has released some footage in the last week or two showing their fighters in direct fire engagements with IDF forces in the tunnels, which is terrifying. Going in those tunnels, not knowing what's around every corner, and then somebody opens up with small arms and you can't even see them. It's the dark. That's the challenge of trying to clear any tunnel network and what the IDF are up against below ground in Gaza. And then Israel has also started to show more images and videos of weapons, food, equipment, and machinery for building some of these rockets and RPGs as they move through some of these tunnels. Now, the first few weeks of the ground operation, the tunnels were mostly empty, which checks out, makes sense, passes the common sense test. It was no secret that Israel was moving into the Gaza Strip and would be searching for and destroying any tunnels they came across. So Hamas then smartly moved back from those tunnels. Those tunnels in the north are still being used and are still operational in a large degree today, but they had the opportunity to move some of their, stashes of weapons and ammunition further back from the front, which is to be expected. And of course, some of these larger underground weapons manufacturing facilities, those wouldn't have been located near the Israeli border at baseline. So again, those tunnels up north are still being pretty heavily utilized by Hamas. They have not all been discovered, not by a long shot. But as the IDF pushes further into central and southern Gaza, we're likely to see a lot more footage like this, where the tunnels look like they have been recently occupied and are playing a significant role in Hamas's continued resistance efforts. Then turning to Hamas, there's a video I wanted to show here of one of their operatives coming out of a tunnel in central Gaza, they say, and engaging an Israeli tank with an RPG at close range. I thought this was worth showing because it's kind of start to finish, the attack. And I think it shows just how challenging it's going to be for, and continues to be for Israel to identify these militants coming out of the ground. Look at this. Even with a drone overhead, you're probably not seeing that guy moving through that alleyway with the vegetation up against the building. And then that tank that he peeks through here, you got to be looking right at this wall to see that RPG poke through. And of course, as expected, they fire the RPG. There's an explosion. Hard to tell if it is the trophy system activating and defeating that RPG warhead, or if it's an effective strike against the tank, and the Hamas militant runs back into the tunnel network. Additionally, yesterday, Hamas claimed responsibility for 11 attacks against Israeli forces all across Gaza yesterday, and one of these was pretty notable, another house-borne IED. They say our Mujahideen confirmed the bombing of a house that had been booby-trapped with a number of explosive devices by a Zionist foot force of 30 soldiers after luring them into the house, and as soon as they entered the place, it was completely blown up, leaving them dead and wounded, and they say this is just to the east of Khan Yunis and the southern portion of the Gaza Strip. We've talked about this before, these house-borne IEDs. It's a double-edged sword for Hamas to be utilizing this tactic. On the one hand, it's incredibly lethal. Any force moving through urban terrain is they have to, one, clear all of these buildings. So they're going to be moving in and out of multiple structures in a day. But they also have to take some sort of cover. And in the middle of an urban environment, that cover is going to be a building. You might use it for a command post just to take a rest for a little bit, or move casualties into. There's any number of reasons that a force moving through an urban center would need to occupy a building for a period of time during operations. When those detonate, they can be incredibly lethal. Can kill a lot of people. On the other hand, that if you're Israel moving through the Gaza Strip and 1 in 20, 1 in 50, 1 in 5 houses blow up when your forces move in there, how long until you say enough's enough? We're just going to start leveling homes rather than sending soldiers in and clearing room by room. It's not worth the risk. Again, we've talked about this in the past, but this is one of the reasons that Raqqa and Mosul looked the way they did after the counter-ISIS campaign. Islamic State rigged so many of those houses to be blown up as soon as U.S. or some of our allied forces moved in to clear them, that at some point, not worth the risk. You just start leveling houses and starting from scratch. Hamas also put out a statement yesterday detailing the death and destruction in the Gaza Strip. They say that so far, more than 70,000 homes have been totally destroyed, with nearly 70% of all housing across Gaza damaged and 1.9 million people currently displaced from their homes. Additionally, Hamas says that 11,000 injured people are in need of urgent medical care that cannot be provided in Gaza, that 10,000 cancer patients are going without their needed care, that 50,000 pregnant women are in need of follow-up or other health-related services, and that more than 150,000 patients of chronic disease require treatment currently unavailable in Gaza. Again, just a reminder, it's so easy to focus on the military activity, the bombs that are falling, the bullets being fired through the streets, but this is 2 million people in Gaza now with a severely degraded health system trying to operate in the middle of this war. So there's a lot of people that are not necessarily casualties of the fighting that could very quickly, and already have, become casualties of this war. And then the escalation that nobody was really predicting even just a few days ago, after a missile and drone attack by Tehran into Pakistan territory, which Iran says was targeting militant groups, Pakistan responded by carrying out strikes against what they say were separatist militant hideouts inside of Iran. So Islamabad said on Thursday that its forces launched a series of highly coordinated and specifically targeted precision military strikes in Iran's southeastern Sistan and Baluchistan province as part of an operation that they call Marj Bar Samanchar, a phrase which loosely translates to death to the guerrilla fighters. The Pakistan Foreign Ministry added that a number of militants were killed during that operation, still waiting for details as it relates to the battle damage assessment. Pakistan also said that the hideouts targeted in the operation were used by the Baluchistan Liberation Army, BLA, and the Baluchistan Liberation Front, BLF, two militant groups who are fighting for greater regional autonomy. And then a good assessment of what we're seeing and what we're likely to see going forward on this front was put together by Saeed Jaffrey, the deputy director of the Lahore-based Center for Security, Strategic, and Policy Research. He said Pakistan's swift kinetic response to the Iranian strikes has made its red lines absolutely clear, being indicative of the fact that Iran's use of force will be destabilizing. He says, in other words, if Iran decides to undertake such risky actions against Pakistan going forward, it won't be able to achieve anything. He says, if anything, it'll be faced with a formidable military challenge on its eastern border. Therefore, it is important for Iran to ensure that domestic voices, if any, that call for taking on Pakistan are sidelined. And then in terms of Pakistan, he says there will be little support to ramp up things with Iran, especially because the country has other crises to navigate. So his big takeaway here is that the tit for tat that we saw right here should be good. That should kind of settle things. It lets Iran know, don't escalate this. We're going to respond immediately. And Pakistan has a significant military force and, of course, a nuclear power. And says that within Pakistan, there doesn't appear to be any desire to try to escalate and enter into a larger engagement with Iran. So fingers crossed that was just a one-off event. But that's all I've got for now. Of course, if interested in national security subjects, be sure to check out the sit reps I put out on Substack. Link is in the description below. Substack now also has ad-free, sponsor-free videos that go live about 1 hour before they're up on YouTube. But thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.